Hello, hello. Happy Sunday. Welcome back to the UpSet podcast. We're so happy to be with you this evening. Thank you for joining us. And of course, I'm never come here alone. I have the best crew in all the land with me. What's up, everybody?
Happy family.
I thought it was your favorite crew. Now it was the best crew.
Best favorite. It varies. There are
Alright.
just not enough adjectives to describe you guys. So, I have to mix them up every now and
So
again.
Pat, don't get it twisted. Whoever shows up is her favorite.
We are just 2/3 tonight.
I know, right? We're
Just
looking kind of scanty. We're looking kind of scanty, but this is a busy time of the year. Tally, he's doing what he does. He's fighting for causes. Right now, he's working with what's his name, Reverend William Barber, of the Poor People's Campaign. Yeah,
I like Pastor Barber.
Yeah, he's engaged in a protest rally, and so we want to support him in that effort. And
Did
Charles
you say
is.
what they were protesting? I mean, it's a lot of stuff going on, but
I
women's rights or.
I don't know, but can you look in the comments for somebody in there said they have some?
He has some adjectives for. Well, at least you kind of hear in spirit, Tally.
Tell us what's going on, Pastor Tally.
What's happening at this rally here?
I want to know what the protest is about.
Yeah,
and you also want to say hello to Pastor Grissom. That's right. If it's Sunday, it's UpSet podcast.
Hey, Pastor Grissom.
What's
it's
up?
one and the same.
Coming on.
We're happy. Hello, everybody. Hi, Rochelle. Thanks for tuning in. I have had a good previous week. I'm thinking this week is going to be even better. I'm claiming it. I don't know about you guys, but this is going to be a good week, right?
Amen.
It's going to be a good week. So, guys, we haven't been live for a couple of weeks. We've missed interacting with our audience. But tell us, what are some of the things that have been going on over the 2 weeks that you're like, man, I wish I could talk about this on the podcast, but anything sticking out?
Listen,
Everybody was talking about the queen who passed away. It was on everyone's timeline. Some people I don't care. Some folks were like, oh my goodness, what are we gonna do? So as people of color, we've had a range of responses to that loss because of the long history of exploitation and mistreatment of our people from that royal line. And so it's a tough situation for a lot of us, but we do send our condolences to the royal family.
Absolutely. Yeah. Someone was saying, it's the only queen I've ever known. And I was like, weird.
That was what I was
in our lifetime.
thinking.
Yeah.
It's historic still,
It is. It is.
I'm sure it's hard to lose a loved one still.
Yeah. We still
it doesn't even matter the age,
right.
It's I feel a way not coming to the podcast, but I got to go back to work. And
you were on vacation. That's right,
man. What was it? 3 weeks, a month, 6 months? What was it?
3 weeks. I mean, in 22 years, this is probably the only vacation that I've stayed really disconnected, as disconnected as I was, because sometimes I would cheat, you know what I mean, and just try to call and see what's going on at the office, etc. But this one, I was away. I had a great time.
Yeah, we're glad to be live. Glad you're back. And
miss you, buddy.
Yeah, you deserve that break, Pat.
Yeah. And we want that to be a testament to other people out there. Sometimes we're always on the grind. Sometimes you just got to take some time away and enjoy life. That's what it's about.
Tally, I wanted to say this. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to update as we were asking what Tally was. He says it's an attempt to dislodge an entire community of poor people in the University area in the name of gentrification.
Sounds about white.
Wow.
Sounds about what? I didn't hear.
Sounds about white.
Oh.
Sounds about white.
All right. We'll be praying for that cause. Yeah. Wow. Thanks, Tally, for
power to the people.
Yep. What were you saying, Pat? I'm sorry, I interrupted.
No, actually, you go ahead, because I'm going to actually say what I was going to say when we start our show. So you go ahead.
I noticed that Pat has an Oakwood hat on. I want to give a shout out to all the ladies in Carter Hall. There was a little fire in the dorm there, so we're grateful that there were no fatalities or no serious injuries from that situation.
Wow. My
And
son didn't even
so
tell me about
God
that.
bless Oakwood University.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
Amen.
Marlena, your son is not going to call home to tell you about that. Okay? It's not going to happen.
It's
Yeah.
But I did
it's
talk to your son this
Amen.
week. I did talk to your
You
son.
talked to him? I
You
texted him.
start Pat, you
I
had to
said,
say that,
call
man.
me.
You're gonna get him
He
in
says,
trouble.
I am. I hear nothing.
Yeah, I feel like I know there was a fire when I was at Oakwood and Wade Hall. I think it's just like I hate to
It's
say
y'all
it, but it's
bad
almost
cooking.
like I think it was a candle. Somebody had like it was something. Somebody had their laundry basket too close to the vent, or something. It was just something weird.
Well, the report that I saw said that it was an AC unit.
Air condition. No, well, that was her time.
Oh.
She was saying her
Yeah,
time.
no, I'm talking
Her
when
time.
we
Okay.
had a
Her
fire.
time.
It was
Way back
Okay.
in the day, like 25 years ago, something like that.
You know,
Watch
the
it,
sad
Pat.
part is you're not that far off. That's the sad part. Oh,
Yeah, I went to school with Moses, so you know we good. We good.
You saw the bush live, right? The burning bush. I saw it. I was there. I saw
was
it.
there. You
Yeah.
better believe it. But you're right though, GP. Good looking out. They are safe. And everything. I think they're in a hotel, going back and
Yeah.
forth to fix up everything. But God got his eyes and his hands all over Oakwood, so you know how that goes.
Amen.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there's been so many, you know, I hate to say this, but I mean, because we were talking about the death of the queen, but I just feel like there's so much loss on my timeline. Like people,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
of course, you know,
Mine
before
too.
we recorded, Dr. Thornton was someone
Yeah.
that we lost, since we
Yeah.
haven't had a chance to speak about that. I mean, we
Mhm.
recognize how much that impacted so much of the Adventist community, not just Potomac or Allegheny East, but a lot of people were impacted by his ministry. It's just people that some people just think will be around forever, you know, and it's like these deaths
If
just
not
happen.
forever, at least many decades. You know,
Exactly.
it's gonna be a
You
long
know?
time, right?
And we're looking at people, it doesn't even matter the age. I mean, I feel like people in my age group, younger, older, it's just, you know, it really makes you reevaluate life and you know what matters and how you want to spend your time and you know what we're focusing on. So yeah, okay, well thank you, Monte Cristo. Dude, I try to do a little something from time to time, but Pat, put your hat back on.
Dr. Duke.
All right, I'm just all right. All right. You got it. You got
But
it.
no, great. It's great to be back live, everybody. Go ahead and share this tonight, because we really have a topic that's an important topic. This is Suicide Awareness Month. But we know that unfortunately suicide is something that takes place every month. I'm not sure the statistics on daily. And it's something that's always before us. We don't necessarily like to talk about it because it's uncomfortable. I mean, I know it is kind of sometimes for me, but as the UpSet podcast, we don't frown away from topics that are hard to talk about. These are the ones that we go full force with. And of course, we didn't want to talk about this without bringing on a special guest who has some expertise that he is able to share with us. So Pat, you're leading us out tonight. Do you want to go ahead and introduce our guest?
Sure. I'd like to bring him on. We work together, Pastor and Dr. David Defoe. Everybody knows exactly who he is.
Dr. Dave.
And so we're just glad, Dave, that you took the time out of your busy schedule to come on and hang out with us just a little bit. Why you got me next to him? Okay, no problem.
My busy schedule watching football.
Exactly.
Football Sunday. Yeah.
Sorry.
But we are happy. Actually, you who came to mind, I remember you coming in 5 or so years ago, and immediately, just because we came out of the elections around October time, the biggest thing that we wanted to talk about was suicide, especially around our young people. And I remember immediately putting up all of those stats on our website. And surprisingly enough, upsetters, we do have a lot of people who call the office because their children, and remember, this is not about children, this is right across the board, but because their children have either committed suicide or cutting, which is a different angle, but those who have actually tried or at least have talked about it. I'm going to take it to another angle, and I'm going to leave it in your hands, Dave, for us to have this conversation. And by the way, I call him Dave. No one else in the world calls him Dave but me. Am I right?
Yes, you and your twin brother.
Right. Call me Dave. Okay, I'll try to say David, or I'll try to say Doctor, but he is Dr. Defoe. And we respect him for his mental health, what he has taught us in mental health. And we brought him on because he is one of those who are an authority when it comes to suicide. What I do want to talk about is mental health. I want to take us into that really quick because what I was going to say to you before, Latasha, while we were starting out, is that on my vacation, I didn't have one headache, no dizzy spells, no fainting spells. My cortisone levels was on an all-time low, and the reason why I wanted to wait to say that was because when it is high like that, or when I didn't know what it was and it was high like that, I wish I wouldn't wake up the next morning. Wish I wouldn't. That's a buzz word. That sometimes we hear that and we say, oh, that's Pat, or that's Dave, or that's whoever just talking about that. Those are signs. We're going to talk about that further down the line, but those are signs that that makes you say, wait a minute, there's something going on there. Dave, you sent us some stuff that I want to share with everybody really quick. They says 45,979 Americans die by suicide. It's the 12th leading cause of death per year. And this is where I was coming up from, where it says 10% of adult Americans have thought about suicide. All right. That's the reason why I started off that way, because it's so close around us in some way or another. Here's the other thing, because I want to put this out to everybody, that 54 of Americans have been affected by suicide in some way. So there may be someone that we have known that has been connected. Men die by suicide 3.9% more often than females. And females were 1.8 more likely times to attempt suicide, to attempt it, right? 54%. Marlena, here we go with this, right, from our other show. 54% of firearm deaths were suicide. Firearms. 53% of all suicides were by firearms. Just a few more, and then get to it. And you know that if Charles was here, I know that he's traveling right now. Chuck is big on veterans. 2019, the suicide rate was high, 1.5% higher for veterans and those who are over the age of 18. That's just three more. 90% of those who died by suicide had a diagnosable mental health condition at the time of their death. All right. 46% of American ages 18 plus living with mental health condition received treatment. Health condition received treatment in the past year. 72% of communities in the United States did not have enough mental health providers.
Wow.
To serve residents in 2021, according to federal guidelines. Pastor Dave, Doc, I know we're putting a whole lot in your lap, but I wanted to ask the upsetters first before we come to you. Do you all know anyone, or in your life, you had anyone close to you, or do you know anyone that have committed suicide? Anyone?
I've had family members, yes.
I had a friend from high school who committed suicide.
I had a relative attempt. And I had some coworkers whose spouse committed suicide. So it was pretty tough.
Do you mind if I ask the chat room, if you will, if you just answer, don't put any names out there, but do you have anyone, or do you know anyone, family members, etc.? Just go ahead and put it in. Do you know someone, or have you been affected? Let's just put it that way. They said 54%, but have you been affected by suicide in some way? Just go ahead and put it in the chat. Go ahead and put it in the chat.
I recently had an experience with a church family member who was strongly considering it. And we had to get the person to the right place to make sure nothing happened. And that was very recently.
Wow. Pastor, we know that you run a mental health facility, if you will. Talk to us about suicide. I mean, I know we're just throwing it as broad. It's in your lap. Talk to us about suicide. What would you want people to know? First of all, tell us if you're equipped to handle this thing.
Well, if you're talking to me, I didn't know who you were describing there. if you're talking to me, I'm the conference's relationship ministries director.
There you go. Gotcha.
We also have underneath our umbrella mental health, and so we've taken up sort of the project of ensuring we at least promote mental wellness across the conference. Health deals with the body, others deal with the spirit. We try to at least focus somewhat on the mind, in addition to family and all that kind of stuff. But I think that one of the things that we have to at least start this conversation with is a framework and understanding that our language, when we discuss things like this, matter, right? Language reflects our attitudes and also influences the attitudes of others as it relates to these sort of topics. And words, of course, we know have power, and words matter. And so when we talk about suicide, we have to make sure that we include language and ideas that are indicators of the social justice and the power that we have to shape our own lives and our own feelings regarding some things. And so I think it's important for us to first understand that, we don't say someone committed cancer. Right. We don't say someone had a successful attempt at cancer, right? So one of the things that we have to do with our language is we have to normalize the experience that people are going through and understand or embrace the pathology that's attached to the illnesses that surround suicide. And so, we say someone died by suicide, or there was a suicide death, or a suicide attempt. Because one thing we don't want to do when we even talk about individuals that have unsuccessful, we don't want to say someone had an unsuccessful suicide attempt, because that sort of connotes an achievement or something positive, even though it may have resulted in tragic outcomes. And so we have to be very careful with our language. And so that's one of the first things that we sort of help people as we try to address topics like this, is working on how our attitudes adjust to how we see these things, right? Because of course, even as we talk about commit, people used to view suicide as something related to sin or a crime. And so one commits adultery, one commits murder. And so if we were to take the language of suicide and put it in its right pathological place, and attach sort of a health, view it through a health lens, as it is. Oftentimes it's a mental health challenge, or it's a response to some exigent circumstance that I have going on that I no longer have the ability to cope with. And so hopelessness or despair creeps in, and I can't see my way out through the darkness. And so, like many of us feel at times, I might as well give up than continue to press on or persevere. And so I think it's very important for us to understand that there are many people that are going through periods in their life. I know when I have clients that come to me and they say to me that they've thought about harming themselves, the first thing I always tell them is I try to normalize it for them. I try to hear their story and let them know, listen, I'm hearing your story. I'm hearing the traumatic things that you're talking about. If I had been through something like that, I may have been there too. There are many people that have been in your situation, and they may have been there too. And so we have to do some work to make sure that we at least talk about it, and then help people connect to the fact that they're not alone. They're not on an island. They're not the 1%. They're not the 0.1% of the 1%. That it's normal for people to feel periods of hopelessness, and that they can get help. So I'll stop there. I think that was That answered your first question, at least.
No, Dave, that's amazing. I want to ask you to do something for me. Back up a little bit more and help us change the structure of our sentencing. Help us use the right words, if you will. So give me the wrong way to say it.
Yeah.
And the better way to say it.
Saying someone committed suicide. Instead, you say they died of suicide, or they had a successful attempt, or, there was a suicide death is a better way to say that. Even someone who has a suicide ideation or an attempter, saying a person, because we want to personalize this. We want to almost whatever, I can't even pronounce the word, depathologize this. And so instead, we want to say a person living with suicidal thoughts. We want to humanize the thing. Instead of saying someone has a cry for help or they're manipulative, we instead describe the behavior. When we even are working with someone who is experiencing a mental health crisis, we don't say we're dealing with a suicidal crisis. No, we're working with someone who's experiencing overwhelming thoughts or overwhelming feelings of hopelessness or despair as a result of whatever miasma of pain they may be going through. We describe instead how they're going through, as opposed to attaching labels to them, personalizing them.
Gotcha. Oh,
or putting people first,
I mean, I like that you say it this way. Just to be able to put the person in it instead of the situation. Is that the right way? Is that what we're talking about? Go ahead, Latasha. We have someone in.
No, yes, someone had a question in the chat here. It says, can choosing to keep an illness such as cancer a secret and suffer in silence as it kills slowly be seen as an attempt to kill oneself? Meaning you're not seeking help, or you're not making people aware so that they can comfort you or assist you. It's almost like you're like, maybe as a fruit of hopelessness, they feel. Yeah.
Dave, help us with that. What's your thoughts?
Me?
I mean, there are a lot of people, even as pastors, you guys, we know that there are people who are sick that come to us and tell us that they are. I mean, all of us might have had that by now, that won't seek help, but would rather die in silence. Is that a form of suicide?
It's not a form of suicide necessarily. I think we have to take this from a different type of framework, right? Someone has news that they can't sort of handle, right? They have news that they can't handle. They find out that they have cancer, right? We don't know what runs through their mind. We don't know what traumas it is that they're going through. There's a huge difference between being with someone and othering with them. So being able to look on the outside and see what they're going through and not really understand it, we don't really know. We don't know what traumas they've experienced, but we do know that if they have experienced a trauma, there's a life story that surrounds that trauma that has to be understood. We don't know why the person with diabetes keeps eating sugar. Well, does that person, so we walk down a sort of slippery slope when we sort of think about this. We don't want to attach someone making a personal choice about how they deal with their medical illness to them having feelings of suicide or giving up. Just because someone is giving up does not mean that they intend to harm themselves. They may not want to deal with the chemo but there's a amalgamation of things that cross through people's minds as you sit down with people who are dealing with these sort of illnesses. Not everybody wants to lose their hair through chemo. Not everyone wants to, spend time in the hospital. Some people would rather take the remnants of the time that they have left and spend it engaged in doing things that make them happy, that make them smile, as opposed to hooked up to machines. So we want to be very careful not labeling someone or pathologizing someone that's just saying, look, I'd rather go out on my own terms.
Mm-hmm. Dave, I'm going to go another way for all of us, those of us we're all in the work. 2013 Lifeway survey showed that 48% of self-identified evangelicals, fundamentalists, born-again Christians believe in prayer and Bible study alone cannot overcome mental illness. We also know that pastors, there was a time, you guys could remember, there was like one stretch of time when pastors were committing suicide. Is the work that difficult?
It's a lonely work.
Come on. Is the work that difficult?
I mean, I think everyone's experience is different. It's a lot of work, and I don't know. And Dr. Dave, maybe you can help us with this. How you carry the weight of your responsibility is important, I would think, because we can get a lot of bad news. You can get a lot of stress. Do I take that on my own person, or do I pray with them and leave that thing there? But if you're one that take everything, and then we don't know how people's homes are, because just because they look happy on Sabbath, that don't mean there's happiness in the house, And so we get shocked when we hear things, but we don't know what people are really experiencing. So,
isn't that called compassion fatigue? I heard that phrase kind of used a lot, particularly regarding pastors during the pandemic and everything. There, a lot of people were dying, and they were trying to comfort people, yet prepare, their own families and other things. That compassion fatigue, is that kind of what can lead to pastors in particular who are meant to shepherd and comfort everybody? I mean, church, family. I mean, is that kind of where that stems from? Because I think that's a similar statistic to therapists as well. They also are shouldering everybody else's problem.
So for me, I know how to shut it down. I ain't talking to anybody else. When I've had too much, the phone beep, I said just click up. I just, because you have to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dave.
There is a part of it when we don't have balance, when pastors don't know how to step away, when we have the insatiable desire to be needed or to solve problems, we get overly involved with other people's stuff. We get overly involved with carrying the weight of the things that we see on a daily basis. And so when we don't have good coping strategies, when we don't have good self-care, and we're not taught it. And so for most of us that have it, we've caught it from somewhere. It hasn't been taught. For many of us, it hasn't been developed. For many of us, our members know we're on vacation, but yet someone dies, we think that it's time to end vacation because we have to go and tend to the flock. Well, it's Jesus's flock. Jesus's flock will be there when we also get back from vacation. It's that mindset, that constant spinning and constant thinking that makes us believe that we're everything to all people. And so it's that mindset that when we realize that we've reached the limitations of our ability to mask the fact that we can't actually handle it all, that we get to the point where we start to find less meaning in the work we do. We start to find less meaning in the call that we have.
Right.
It's the same thing with Moses thinking his job was to bring people to the promised land when God only told Moses to bring them to the foot of the mountain. He never told him to bring them to the promised land. He said, bring them to the foot of this mountain so that they may worship me. Well, it's understanding that that's our responsibility. Right. And then also understanding that there are life dimensions that affect suicide. There is an emotional dimension where we have to be able to handle excruciating pain or distress or stress, period. the pastor's job, the helper's job, and this is all helpers. The job is stressful. As a therapist and also as a pastor, the therapist disconnects in that the person comes back next week. Right. The chaplain, when they have someone die, the chaplain disconnects. That's the end of the road. Well, for the pastor never gets a chance to disconnect. The people that they see with, they then preach to the next week. They then lead through prayer meeting. They then walk through their struggle. There's no disconnection for us. Right. And so that makes it harder for us to sort of practice the art of detachment, which sometimes we need to have in order for us to step away, catch a breath, and recycle through the pain and the frustrations that we get on a daily basis. But there's also cognitive factors that associated with suicide. We can't solve problems, or problems face us, and we realize, hey, I can't get this problem solved. And we've seen this with some individuals who have recently died of suicide. They get to the point where they've realized they've made mistakes and they can't fix them. Mm-hmm. They think their way. They think that things are so hopeless and they're beyond repair that they say, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to end it all. It's interpersonal. Relationships affect an individual's feelings toward terminating their life.
Can I add something in here, Dave?
Yeah, sure.
Guilt now takes because now that you say that, you say, oh my goodness, look at Oakwood, for example. Personally, we've lost 4 people at Oakwood in just like one stretch. Yeah. Right. And then you say to yourself, wait, you're right. Should we come off a vacation to go? Should we not preach at another place to go, to be able to go to some of these funerals? And then you have that guilt. But the one thing that I see in here also, and we're going to spread it across the board, is inadequacy. You have that feeling of inadequacy to say, I'm not enough, and this is my life. And when we feel like we're called to something, it's every part of our life. Part of our life is called. And I have to say that there's a lot of ministers, even now, ministers who we are among that has, I'm going to say, I hope I'm going to say it right, that has the ideology, am I saying that right, of suicide, right? Or forget that, because I'm learning from you here when we should say that they have hopelessness, or they have despair, or
they're dealing with it, yeah,
or they're dealing with it, or they're dealing with it. I know we talked about the pastor, and I love it. There's even people in the chat that's saying that we need our own therapists.
Yeah.
We need to take real vacation. You know what I mean by real vacation?
Yeah.
We need to be able to take a real vacation. By the way, that's for you too, Latasha. You have a pulpit.
I can take one too. Okay.
No, because we all
may be nicer to us if you do go on one.
hey, watch.
But it's this thing we call suicide has a way of, and I'm not being correct, Pastor Dave, as you were saying in the very beginning, but when we see superstars commit suicide, when we see business, Fortune 500 companies, with the CFOs and the CEOs, we have a couple of anybody could remember some that happened even recently. Regina King's son.
Mm-hmm. I remember the guy from CNN that would do the special show, the exotic eating, and he would go from country to country, and he committed suicide. I was like, what? You would think all that traveling. That's right. Yeah, you think all that traveling, life was great.
Yeah.
We have no idea.
And then that's when
I just said it wrong too, Dave. I said committed suicide. I just said it's okay. It's a mentality.
No. Let's learn this thing, because I said it again too. Dave, help us again.
It's okay. It's died of suicide. So the catchword is substitute cancer for suicide. And if you wouldn't say someone committed cancer, you don't say someone committed suicide. You say they died of cancer. So they died of suicide. They're dealing with cancer. It's okay. It's okay. Don't worry.
I got it. No, we're going to get
working on it. Yeah, died of
because it's important for us to be able, Pastor.
Can I ask him this question while you are contemplating your thoughts?
Mm-hmm.
So, Dave, what do you do when you know someone is suicidal? They know they're suicidal, but they don't want you to call for help.
Oh, okay.
What do you do?
Okay, so, so we skipped like a whole bunch of stuff, but
I'm sorry. Is, we can wait for that question then.
No. Well, it's something that we do have to definitely talk about. But we do have to. A lot of people feel like they can't ask someone if they're thinking of harming themselves or if they're thinking of suicide, because they think that will put that in their mind. We know research tells us the opposite is actually true, right? That it's important for us to ask the person where they are on their continuum of feelings, and then making sure that we make primary our focus of saving their lives. And so we never promise someone, oh, well, if you tell me, I won't tell anybody. No, that's not necessarily true. It's letting someone know, okay, well, I'm going to ask you this and I want you to trust me with this information. And I want you to trust me to see how I can get you the help. And then we have to figure out ways to get them connected to resources in the community, get them connected to resources in the area, in the church. Everyone in every church should have a mental health response person. If you don't have a mental health response person that's trained in something like mental health first aid, I know Marlena, you are. I don't know if anyone, but if you don't have anyone in your church that is trained in mental health first aid, it's making sure that you get that at least as a baseline in your church, so that you have first responders, that just like you have someone in the church that cuts their arm and there's someone who can administer first aid, physical first aid, you need someone that if someone presents with wounds that we do not see, but that still tell a story, that we have the mechanisms in place to sort of assist them and help them. And then the relationship ministries department can, of course, help to connect people to resources for their individual churches if they do need to get someone trained to help them with that first step in fending off individuals with all mental illnesses. So it's not just dealing with suicide, but also dealing with people who are struggling with or dealing with mental illnesses.
Yeah, I want to raise a question from Rodney Grissom. Are pastors mandated to report if we suspect someone is leaning towards suicide? Is it obligatory for us to report it?
Well,
is that a yes, but not a yes?
I know I am, without a doubt. Are you mandated to report it? You should report it unless the next day you want to also do a funeral. But it's not just reporting it so that the person to cover your own self.
Right.
It's reporting it because, that's the biggest fear for a therapist. The biggest fear for a therapist is that one of their clients will die by suicide. Biggest fear, because no one wants to do that kind of paperwork. And then also they don't want to lose a client in that way. But
are you talking about the money, Dave, or are you talking about
client first, then the paper?
No. I mean, you can't. What? It ain't got no money involved. I'm not responsible. Anyway, what was I thinking? What was I saying? Okay, so you want to report it, and you want to report it not just to the police to do a safety check, but you also want to make sure that person then gets connected with resources. So don't leave them on their own, because oftentimes the police departments aren't necessarily all the time equipped in certain jurisdictions to deal with it. And so making sure you have resources in your local area to connect people with, and then also helping people understand that there are some things that they can do with themselves, by themselves, for themselves, to help them lengthen their resiliency around the hopelessness that they're feeling. There are protective mechanisms that they can use, getting them books to read, checking up on them, taking them out to eat, being with them, finding out what tangible needs that may need to be met to see if you can help. Letting them know that you're there to lend a listening ear is also helpful.
Yeah. It seems like I don't know if I was a pastor at the time, but there was a young man that was really struggling. We were trying to talk, and encourage him to allow us to call suicide prevention. And then I took the liberties to call anyway. And they said, well, we can't make him, go to the hospital for help or to get help. He has to want it volitionally. And he wasn't at that place. And so they did not come. Yeah. And so that why I asked that question, whether it's a pastor or anyone, if someone really don't want to go, is there something else you can do? I like the way you phrase it, let us help you, how can we, get you some help to keep you safe? I do like that option.
So there are some individual assessment tools that we all can use. We want to make sure that they don't have any immediate means of self-harming themselves. We ask them, all right, do you have a plan? If you have a plan, do you have the mechanisms in place to carry out that plan? But if they don't have a plan and they don't have the mechanisms to carry out that plan, then we may have some more time. If someone tells you they have a plan, I want to jump off, I want to jump in front of a moving car. Well, they walk outside, they have the tools necessary to do that. And so we want to make sure that we put some protective measures around them. One thing we don't want to do is we also don't want to talk to someone alone that is struggling or that is dealing with a suicide, because one of you may need to leave the conversation to call someone while the other person continues to encourage, right? We want to be non-judgmental, empathetic. We don't want to invalidate the person's feelings, even if they tell us, trust the Lord and you could pull yourself together and don't worry, all things work together for the good of those who love the Lord. It's true, but maybe that's not what the person needs at that time, right? They already know that all things work together for the good of the Lord, for those that trust in him, but it ain't working out real good for me right now. And I'm still trusting the Lord. So what do I then do with that? Right. And then we need to validate the person's feelings and see them as an individual. And realize that if someone is telling you this, that is a good thing. It's the individuals that no one knows, that no one says anything to. Not saying that it's not for you to take serious if someone also tells you. But listen, if someone brings it up to you, that's a cry for help. Right. And so we need to make sure that we at least get them the appropriate mechanisms to help themselves. And if you don't have professionals in your church or in your sacred spaces to help, you need to connect to those resources on the outside.
So we had a question. I'm sorry.
Nope. Go ahead.
We had a question from the chat because I know we kind of talked a little bit about some of the signs that someone is suicidal, but as Marion is saying here, sometimes we gave examples of people who looked on the surface like they have every reason to live, but yet they committed suicide. So the red flags aren't always obvious.
That's right.
To us. So what are some ways that we can kind of see past the image and maybe pick out that someone may be going through something?
Yeah, and I think, Latasha, that's very important, right? Because many of us who poor, like me, I'm poor. If I find out someone's who's rich got problems, I'm like, well, what problems you could possibly have, right? But we don't really know what someone's stories are. We don't know what befuddles, never mind. I mean, the great hip hop artist says, more money, more problems. Anyway, so what are some of the suicide warning signs? We pay attention to how people talk. What their mood is, what their behaviors are. So is a person talking about being a burden to others? Are they experiencing unbearable pain? Are they talking about killing themselves? Are they talking about feeling trapped? Individuals who are trapped in domestic violence situations, oftentimes, they feel so stuck. It's also prevalent. Discussing having no reason to live. Right. And then we want to take a look at things like behavior, right? Is there increased use of alcohol and drugs? Are they acting recklessly? Are they spending too much or spending too little? If they're on the older side, are they stopping to take their medicines? Are they looking to give stuff away? Are they visiting or calling people to say goodbye? Are they being aggressive? Are they giving away their prized possessions? Things that matter to them, right? Like when my mom never mind. We will know something's wrong with my mother when she starts giving away her sweet potato pie recipe, you know. You know, and then we also, so not just how people talk, how people behave, but also their mood. Right. We take a look at their depressive symptoms because, of course, we know depression is one of those mental illnesses that are so very common, but also are a major contributing factor to suicide rates in this country. What are their loss of interest? Do they have increased irritability around certain situations? Is there increased anxiety? Because we know that the two most co-occurring diagnoses for mental health is anxiety and depression. They oftentimes come together. Have they experienced some amount of humiliation? So all of the things. So we take a look at how they talk. We take a look at their behavior. We take a look at their mood, and we can sometimes gauge whether or not we need to ask somebody the important questions of what their intent is for their future or their lives.
So Dave, what about the other extreme, like exaggerated euphoria? Like they just seem too happy. Could that be, you know, a sign that they're covering?
It's hard. Some people who really want to have a suicide attempt or a suicide or die by suicide, they oftentimes don't feel like they need to fake or put on.
Okay.
But if there's a significant change in behavior, if they're not normally that way, then it's possible. You know, it never hurts to ask. The myth is that if you ask, you'll put it in the person's mind. That's not the truth. Ask.
Dave, here's one. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tasha. You said.
I'm sorry. I did interrupt you last time, but there was a question that dealt with another myth. A lot of people think that people who commit suicide, that it wasn't unplanned. And so this person is asking that. Is that true? Are most suicides pre-planned?
Most we don't really know. Does pre-planning mean someone left a note? Does pre-planning mean that someone you know,
thought about
went to purchase a gun, or like, so what does pre-planning actually mean? So we don't really know.
Those who leave a note, does that mean?
Yeah, like you said,
but it may not be. I've had clients that have written suicide notes and they're still here for 7 years. Do I think that they intend to harm themselves? Still no, but they still have suicide notes. We've read it, we've processed through them.
Wow.
Things in them that they feel like they actually need to get off their chest to someone while they're still living, and they've walked through and they've processed those things. And so it's a very complex issue because the human condition and predicament is complex.
Yeah.
It's not, we can't narrow stuff down to just statistics because there's always someone who's an outlier to it.
Yep, that's true.
And like we never saw it coming.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. That's something. Dave, I want to throw another thing at you in our next 10 minutes. I mean, I know we're coming at it fast. You know, as a kid, we always heard about Samson.
Oh my! I know what you're gonna ask. Oh my goodness!
I mean, but come on, but it's true. Now that we are,
you know, Dr. Defoe don't like these kind of questions.
Well, I mean,
you need Tally on here. Tally didn't show up because I was coming.
You know, now that we know the pain, the unbearable pain that people go through before. Not attempting, planning on dying by suicide. Hey, listen, it's got to come out some way, right?
Everybody knows what you're saying.
Yeah. When they do, and I've known people, and actually I remember having to do a funeral, and you know, how do you come out and say they are going to be there in the kingdom? I'm not being facetious.
Yeah,
you know, they're going to be saved. Don't worry, you'll see them again. You know that grief hope thing that we preachers say and do. kind of set us on a different path, or set us on a path of, if you commit suicide, are you going to hell or are you going to heaven?
It's the insatiable desire to think that just because you work for God, you can speak for God. Like we don't know. We don't know what someone is going through. We don't know if it's a result of their illness. We don't know if there's something physiologically wrong with their mind that has prompted them to make this decision to end their lives. Right. Well, God knows that. God sees that. And just like the diabetic who's 400 pounds and still eats cake every night, God won't say to them probably, oh, well, you killed yourself. You're here because you ate yourself to death. No, we wouldn't say that to someone who we wouldn't say that to someone who I don't know, any other thing. We don't say that to someone who was in a car accident and texting. We wouldn't say to them, well, your mistake caused. So we don't know. And so the idea that because someone has committed that someone has died by suicide, we know.
GP, I'm sorry, GP. That whole committed thing is getting me with your singing group. But go ahead.
We know how they. We know, how this story will end for them. We don't know. We also don't understand the trauma that they've been through. But God knows that. God sees that. God is not God is not punitive. God is all about our redemption. He's died for that person. That felt like they also needed to die for themselves. God is more loving and caring and compassionate and understanding than that. And so there's somebody here who maybe has someone whose child or loved one has died by suicide, and you've given up complete hope that you'll never see them again. It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't.
Because God sees more than what we see, and we love to box God into what he can do and speak for God. We don't do that. We have the hope to that we get ourselves together so that we actually have the answer to it. But we don't think we have the answer now. We don't put people in heaven or hell because that's not our place.
Dave, I was joking when I put on that music, but that's a sermon right there.
Oh yeah, that was good talk.
And
don't say that, because then I'm gonna ask for an offering.
It's coming around.
We got $3 and normally what they give.
Hey, that's better than give it. Run me my money.
We could stay on this. I'm going to tell you this, Dave, that I have children at Camp Danny Davis from the age of 8 years old to 17, and literally we have to keep a therapist close by. Because there's never in 10 years, there's always someone that's going to come out and say, I want to kill myself. And by the way, I'm coming out with the words just like that. And we're talking about children who are making these statements. So we act accordingly, and we have them, we have therapists on hand just in case something. Go ahead, Dave.
Our children are dealing with more than any generation before them has had to deal with.
Say that.
And this is why the church has to be apt to change, because then the church will no longer be a place where those children will feel like it can speak to whatever challenges it is that they're going through. That's why it's so very important for us to sort of shift some of our mindsets and our thinking as it relates to our children. They're just so different. And their needs are so diverse. And they're so accepting and so caring and so communal with each other. It's hard. And so the fact that you create an environment where someone says, this place is safe enough for me to say that is good. And that's what we need to make sure that we do in all of our churches, not just for our children, but also for adults. We have to be able to create environments that are safe for people to say that they're not doing okay.
Can we say home? Can we say home too, Doctor?
Yeah, and home. Well,
I know. I'm just saying. I know we say in church, but can we say home also?
Home too. We have to make sure people are okay with that, because we have to be okay with being places of healing.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that healing means that the damage never existed. It just means that it no longer controls us. Well, how do we give people that locus of control, or that means to control life's exigencies with the Bible, if the church is not safe? So the church has to be safe,
right?
So that we can show them the God who not only could get them a therapist, but the God who can take the pain away. Not maybe even right now, but has promised you later, whatever, however we want to call it.
Man. Wow. Producer, we have Rodney Grissom. I want to go back to his question, and then I'd like to go on to end this. I would like to go on to what can we do? Where can we send those who are in this? Let's go ahead and ask that question. Good.
Yes. How do you help the survivors, those who wish they could have done more to prevent a loved one from dying by suicide? You know, they feel like they've missed all the signs, and how could I have missed this?
Yeah. The only way that we get people through the guilt that they may experience, because this is guilt.
Yeah, that's right.
They have to sit with it. We can't try to remove it from them. We have to sit with them in it, and they have to begin to sort of figure out a way to process it, you know? So we have to develop a collaborative approach of helping someone understand that they are not responsible for someone else's choices, but they are responsible for the conversations they didn't have, because we know that's what grief does to us. Grief makes us think. The first thing it does is it makes us think what it is we could have done, should have done, would have done. It's all about dealing with the fact that we now have unmet expectations, unmet hopes, unmet dreams. Wow. And so it's helping someone understand that this is a grief moment, and the only way to heal the heart is to walk through the pain. There's no other way around it. A lot of people try to skip that necessary step. No, we are going to have to sit in this stuff, and we're going to have to feel it in order for us to not just put it aside, so that it doesn't come up later, so that it's not triggered by some other tragedy. We sit with it. We get the appropriate therapeutic engagement, or even if you decide to walk through the process of grief on your own, using books and resources and stuff like that, whatever it is that you do, we have to process the pain that we feel. It doesn't go anywhere if we don't intentionally work through it. Right. It just comes out later. It comes out in negative behavior instead, but it comes out somehow. We act out what we won't cry out.
Right. Wow. Yeah. And I had a couple of previous coworkers who lost a family member, and I noticed every September they always post pictures of their loved one and share fond memories, but also use it as an opportunity to educate others. So even though they're hurting, they're still saying something has to come from this. Let me try to help someone else. And I said, to me, it was so effective, because it's something they experienced, but instead of dwelling on the pain, they've kind of shifted it to let this negative thing that happened to us possibly prevent someone else from making the same choice. And I thought that was probably a good way to process the grief, I guess, for them, because they're pretty faithful with it every year.
And grief has to be witnessed.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's what killed it. That's what hurt us in COVID, is that we were not able to come together to witness the griefs that we were experiencing. Wow. Grief. There's a story of grief that has to be told, and we have to tell it.
Yeah. Hey, let's look at Anthony Daniels. I know I was getting ready to close up. Let's look at Anthony Daniels real quick. Go ahead.
Yes. He was saying that after a family member died by suicide a year ago, some of them went through a mental health first aid course that was very beneficial. Does AEC have a similar program available through the conference for training lay members?
There we go.
Yeah. So I think a couple of years ago, we have offered it at camp meeting. We had a mental health first aid training there. We've done it at a few churches. Currently, depending on what area you're in, we have more people that the conference can send out that are trained in mental health first aid. For a while, I was doing them. I think I let my certification lapse maybe. And so we do have other individuals that are able to train individuals or churches or lay people that the conference will knock on wood, sponsor to take the mental health first aid course.
Yeah, because I saw Mike Williams was saying that he took it at Southwest Church. So
yeah. And I know that we do have one for youth, that we one for youth. So I think that's great. So listen, there's this thing called 988. Unless anybody have anything else that you wanted to go ahead.
We did have one more question.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Let's go.
Right there when we were talking, and Monte Cristo Duke said, we may never know why a person decides to end their life, but they've read about multiple family members committing suicide. Is there a genetic factor there?
Wow.
Right. They said something about family history, Dave. So if you can help us with that part.
Yeah. So of course there are certain mental health conditions that lend itself to heightened rates of suicide, right? And then we also know there is some generational correlations between individuals that experience, say, things like depression, or there's been links generationally with anxiety. Of course, because we know trauma is passed down also in our DNA, not only through our physiology, but also through our mythology or our stories. There is also some contributions there. But one thing that we also know is that one of the things that we didn't see in COVID is we didn't see a rise in suicide rates. For the first time in decades, the suicide rate during COVID went down almost about 3% or so. And we also know that the highest rate of suicide is typically in the month of April. Well, in April of 2020, the largest reduction in suicide rates happened in April 2020.
Wow.
Because when COVID struck, there was a sense then of community.
Right.
The government sent checks out.
Hey.
Right. Unemployment was helpful to people. Right. So money is one of those symbolic gestures of hope. Right. Access to resources is a contextual factor that may also benefit some individuals who are in need of more support. And so, to answer the question, even
neighbors also, Dave, neighbors also were helping out each other.
Yeah, people came together.
Yeah, people came together.
So with some people, once you look at the state of the family, most family members live in the same socio-economical milieu. So if there's a family that is experiencing a pain or trauma, they usually all go through it together. Well, if we also don't have a means of coping with our traumas and our history, we also probably don't have a means of coping with stress and life's exigencies and all these other kind of things. And so we begin to develop this environment of hopelessness. And so that also could contribute to it as well.
Wow.
So it's also a warning sign if someone else in the family has committed suicide. If someone else in the family, see, Pat, you ain't the only one.
I'm sorry,
died by suicide.
Sorry.
It's also one of those warning signs as well.
Yeah. Well, I was taking us into 988.
Oh, yes.
If you will. I know that's the number that just came out when we talked about it even earlier. Pastor Dave, you said National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Tell us about that, so that there may be somebody here right now that may be going through something or knows someone who's going through something. You just came out with a plethora of loss of sleep, giving away possessions. Somebody might see all of those things and say, okay, where do I go from here? We were talking about there are people who are alone in this that may be listening to this, don't want to say anything to anyone. Let's give them a reprieve.
Yeah. So know that you're not alone, and know that there are people out there that care about you. There are people out there that even if you don't know they exist, they love you. And so I believe NAMI came out with the 988, which is the short code for calling the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. And so from any phone, if you dial 988, it will bring you to someone that you can report suicidal ideations to, and also could get you connected with resources in your community. And so that's one mechanism that we have. If you also go on the conference website, like we have comprehensive suicide resources that are provided for you on the conference website. Visit aec.org/suicide. There are also some other numbers that you can use if you are a member of the LGBTQ plus community. There is a particular hotline that you can call if you have loved ones that are part of that community as well. There's a hotline that you can call. There's a hotline for teens. There are apps that teens can use. There's apps that adults could use. And so we have a lot of those resources on our conference website. And then also understanding that, there are on the web, there are plenty of resources as it relates to mental health and suicide awareness. And then lastly, if you need help, get help. Everyone should at least at some point in their time sit down with someone professionally, just like you would a doctor. I've never seen someone come to therapy that said they didn't need to come to therapy that realized they didn't need to come to therapy. We all carry something. Right. Everyone carries something, and especially if you have a health insurance that will cover it, and some people it covers them for completely free. At least use the benefit to get a mental health checkup or check-in. Some place to tell your business that no one could tell your business to anyone else. Even if it's just that. Awesome. We also have a clinical directory on the website that people can access in their geographical area in the Allegheny East territory. You can go on that clinical referral directory. It'll be updated in 2 weeks though, but the old one is still there. You can go and you can find clinicians and resources in your area that's been provided for you there. Awesome.
And that's on the Relationship Men page.
Yeah, but it should be on the suicide page too.
As well. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I want to take this, Dave. I want to thank you for hanging out with us today.
Yeah, thank you.
I knew you were smart, but I didn't know you was this smart. Thanks for hanging.
I don't know if that's smart, but
but thanks for hanging out. Honestly, we always respect your knowledge in the office, and what you have already provided to the conference and those around. So I just want to tell you, man, you get a super hand clap, and those who are
appreciate it.
In the comment section, just let them know how much you appreciate what we had before, and we may come back again. There's a whole lot we have not touched. We have not touched bullying. We have not touched the kids who are going through those who have illnesses. I think in the green room we were talking about what's that other suicide when
euthanasia.
We were talking about all of those things. So Dave, just look around and come back and share with us again. We thank you for your knowledge.
Thank you.
Great.
Yeah.
We're really thankful for that. I want to send it back over to Latasha. You can take it from here.
Yes, I'd like to also thank you for sharing with us this important topic. I know we talked about it last year, but it seems like this year I learned so much more again, and that's why it's important that we continue to talk about these subjects. And we've learned that we shouldn't be afraid to talk about them, because in talking about them we can actually help someone and save a life, which is really what this is all about. Okay, can you put the web address? Sure, we can put the web address in the chat for those who want to follow up on those resources. And
there's a hashtag in the chat. Can we put it up on the screen?
Oh, mercy.
This is no, you will not.
That will be a waste.
Tis the season, y'all.
Yes. Yes. So appreciation from our viewing audience as well. So yes, continue these conversations at your church. This is the podcast. Feel free to even use clips from the podcast to have an AY at your church and share some of the information that was shared by Dr. Defoe, let's keep this conversation alive. This is Suicide Prevention Month for a reason, and we should utilize every opportunity to get information out there. We don't want to be on that side of wishing we could. Dave, you have something else to say?
There's also videos on the website as well. I think even some that me and Pat recorded together for teens last year. And so there are videos on there that people can use in their local church even.
Yeah, very
they're still
good.
there.
Yes,
Perfect.
yes.
Awesome.
Right. Yeah, because we're dispelling that myth that if we talk about it, that means we're encouraging it. No, it's the exact opposite. So thank you once again, Dave. And it's been great, guys. It's great to be back live with all of you. And
Indeed.
it's great interacting with our audience. You all have been phenomenal as usual.
I want Chuck and Tally to come back.
Yeah, and hopefully next week we'll have the whole gang back.
Whole crew.
You know, and maybe we could bring Dr. Defoe back for therapy when we all come back together.
Right. Wouldn't that be something if we had like live therapy? That's just not. But if you have anything else that maybe we did not cover or you want us to cover in a future episode of the UpSet podcast, you know what to do. Email us at upset@aecsd.com. We are working our way through the queue of some of your ideas. And so please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We always want to hear what you're thinking. All right. That's right. I like that. Maybe that should be our new tagline, Rodney.
If it's Sunday.
If it's Sunday.
Sunday. And we are going to work on the merchandise. I know you every week. We're going to figure it out. I might even ask Dave. He always seems to get that great gear. But no, honestly. All right, guys. I've had so much fun. I feel like I don't even want to end tonight. But once again, thank you, Dr. Defoe.
Yeah, Dave, thanks, man.
Yes, excellent. So appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Defoe.
Amen.
Yes,
Excellent.
We hope everyone will have a great week. Be blessed. Encourage someone this week as you interact with them. All right. Until next week. See you later.
Bye, family.